How do you plan for the grief days that you haven't had yet? It seems like an odd question, but I found myself a lot with what I'm going to describe as anticipatory grief. So if I had to attend an event that might be triggering, such as a wedding or a funeral, if I had a birthday, an anniversary, a holiday, a special day coming up, I would make myself stressed and anxious and sick and worried about how I would react with that day. Like, how am I going to handle that day? How am I going to get through that day? And often my anticipatory grief was worse than what I experienced on that day. My worry about that day was worse than that day. How do you handle that? What I ended up doing, just because I'm such a planner in my normal life, is I made sure I had an out for the day. I tried to make a plan for the day, but I also gave myself an out. If I got to that day and I can't do those things, then I just didn't do them. If I needed to, I set up times where I could have alone time, where I could get through a segment of that day and then be home alone to sit in my grief. Over time, I learned to just let that day be what it was. I didn't have to worry about the grief on that day. I knew I was going to miss them. But often, as the years have gone on, I've been able to not be so consumed with grief about my anniversary, about the day he died, about the day we got married. Often I've been able to now reminisce, look back, and when I look at those memories, I'm not so devastated by them. I can look back those memories with and give them back their joy and the original emotions I felt on those days. I could honor his birth. I can celebrate his life. I can celebrate our love together. I can look at the pictures now, but it took time to get there. So just know that if you anticipate grief leading up to special days, that's a normal part of grief. But often those days are not as terrible and is not as heavy as my stress would have led me to believe.